Hey folks, Jack from Moonshift Audio here. In this quick tutorial, I'm going to show you how I made the Dreams Are Real pad patch from my free Retro Serum Presets Pack. It sounds like this. This patch, along with over 50 more basses, leads, keys and pads, are available for free in my Retro Serum Presets Pack. If you want to download that, there's a link in the description. But for now, let's jump into Serum. Okay, here we are, and we have got an initial instance of Serum. Let's get stuck in and make this pad. So as usual, we'll have a look at the oscillators to start with, and for this one I'm just going to use two instances of the JNO, the sort of Roland Juno inspired oscillator that Serum has by default. And for the first oscillator we're going to go wavetable position 2. Not quite so much detune as this, that gets a bit out there, but we are going to use a reasonable amount of unison to really make this quite fat. In here, that's just a bit too spread out. So yeah, about 0.12 is great. We'll layer another one over the top. And again, I'm going to use the JNO. This time we'll go, let's have a look at, yeah. So slightly sort of somewhere between a sawtooth and a square, I'd say that. We'll raise it up an octave. Again, we'll give it a good bit of unison. Just pulling the detune down there so it's not wobbling all over the place. And higher octave oscillators, higher octave anything, often sounds a bit louder than the sort of lower end stuff. So it can be nice to just sort of lower the level a bit of your octave up oscillator. Stops it sounding so much like two notes being played, and it kind of helps it just sort of become part of one fatter sound. So if I turn off oscillator B, it just feels like one kind of coherent tone there, whereas if this was at its initial position, you can hear it just helps it gel. I'm going to use a bit of noise in this patch, and I was up for quite a bright sort of sound, and I found a nice air can. If you want to hear that on its own, it's quite thin, but it just adds a little something. And it's nice to play around with some of these sort of real world sounds rather than always just going for analog or faux analog stuff. Just a little bit of character really. We'll have a look at the filter, and I'm doing something slightly unusual with this. Not with the filter itself, like a low pass 12 dB per octave is absolutely fine. We've already got that on oscillator A, and I'm going to put it on the noise as well. Set the cutoff to about 1500 Hz. But I'm not going to assign the filter to oscillator B. Just so you can hear what that would sound like. Obviously it's dulling that patch down a lot. Whereas now we're just filtering the lower octave oscillator. We'll give it, actually about 10% resonance is fine. So at this point, I'm just going to hop into the effects section, because we are going to filter the top end of both of those oscillators, but we're going to use the filter from in the effects section. So this is sort of like a master filter, really. If we set the cutoff there to about 500 Hz, and we'll leave this on 6 dBs an octave. Give it a little bit of resonance. Maybe a little bit of drive as well could be nice. Just to rough it up a tiny bit. I'm going to come back to this a little bit later on and add some modulation. For now, we'll just quickly have a look at the amp envelope. Going to give this a little bit of an attack, just to, yeah, 70 or 80 is great. Just so it's not coming in too clicky. We'll have the sustain on full, so that means the decay doesn't matter. And we'll just give it a bit of a, like 1.5, 1.7. So, we're starting to get our basic tone now, and we've got the kind of envelope shape going. We're going to do a bit of a classic analog pitch wobble, which you will have seen me use a lot. So for LFO1, I'm going to turn off the BPM sync, about 2 Hz, maybe slightly below for the speed. And we're going to assign this to the fine tune on both oscillators. And the amount, we don't need lots, like 11 or 12 is usually good. It's important to put them the same amount to each oscillator though. So if we now listen to that. Just got that nice, slightly spaced out wobble going on. LFO2, I'm going to assign to the filter pan. I'm not going to go all the way, but just a reasonable amount. And what that's going to do is pan the oscillator A and the noise left and right. And we'll slow this down quite a lot. We'll take it off sync. And what that's doing is just adding some quite subtle sort of stereo information to the sound. It's just something to play around with just to give you a little bit of an unusual character. Don't often do a lot of panning on the filter or on the individual oscillators or the noise. So it's just a nice thing to play around with, you know, especially with something like a pad sound. It's a great way to add texture, and there are some of the sounds where I feel like experimentation is sort of the most forgiving. You can really kind of mess around quite a lot and really you're just going to generate a really interesting texture. LFO3, I'm going to assign to that master filter. Reasonable amount, we'll let that go all the way to the top. And we'll keep this actually BPM synced. And we're going to do an 8 bars so that it really is quite a sort of slow modulation to the whole sound. You can just hear that opening up. Lovely. Effects wise, it's always nice to have a little bit more modulation, so we're going to stick a chorus on here. We'll make it quite slow, pull the delays down, keep the depth at max. Just hear that without. Just adds a little bit of depth there. We'll also chuck a reverb on here. Hall is great. We can leave the size as is, and the decay. In fact, the whole thing. Perhaps pull the mix down a little bit. It's just to add a little bit more depth to the sound. I'll pull in the MIDI from the example. And there you have it, a nice analog pad sound with some slightly unusual modulation. If you found this video helpful, please do like and subscribe for more tips, tricks, resources and downloads from me at Moonshift Audio. Till next time.